Have you ever found yourself questioning your actions, wondering if you were the one in the wrong? That's exactly what brought me here today. I need your help to decide, was I the jerk in this situation? Let me give you the backstory. My boyfriend has a close friend named Max, who's been in our lives for a while now. He's married to Anna, and for over a year, the four of us have been part of a regular social circle. Dinners, concerts, casual outings, you name it, we've done it. On paper, it sounds like an ideal setup. Friends getting along, sharing laughs, and making memories. But reality, far from it. Anna, Max's wife, has a unique personality, difficult to say the least. She's the kind of person you tread lightly around, never quite knowing what might set her off. Her temper flares unpredictably, and it's not just a bad day here and there. It's a constant pattern. If I say I love ice cream, Anna will counter with, "Ice cream is terrible," and somehow make me feel ridiculous for liking it. It's not always directed solely at me, but if I'm being honest, it feels personal more often than not. Still, I tried to keep the peace for Max's sake. For over a year, I swallowed my frustrations, thinking maybe it was just her way of interacting. Maybe she didn't mean harm. But with every gathering, my patience wore thinner. Then, last week, everything came to a head. That one incident made me question everything. My boundaries, my values, and yes, even my temper. Now, as I lay it all out for you, I ask, was I justified in what I said, or was I completely out of line? Let's get into it. To understand why things escalated, you need to know Anna. She's not just difficult, she's exhausting. Every interaction with her feels like walking through a minefield. You never know what will trigger her next outburst, but when it happens, it's impossible to ignore. And let me be clear, this isn't occasional moodiness or the odd bad day. This is who Anna is, all the time. Imagine being at dinner, sharing a casual conversation about something as harmless as food preferences. I might say, "I love ice cream. It's my favorite dessert." Anna wouldn't just disagree. She'd go on a mini tirade about how ice cream is overrated, throwing in a jab like, "I don't understand how anyone with real taste could enjoy that." It's not just a difference of opinion, it's the way she says it, dripping with disdain, as if my love for ice cream somehow offends her on a moral level. And it's not just me. I've seen her turn on others too, friends of Max or even waitstaff at restaurants. Still, for some reason, her hostility toward me feels sharper. It's as though she singles me out, challenging everything I say or do, no matter how trivial. At first, I told myself I was overthinking it. But after a year of this, it's hard not to take it personally. The thing is, Max doesn't seem fazed. He brushes it off as just Anna being Anna, but the rest of us aren't married to her. We're left to deal with her constant negativity, and honestly, it's draining. Even my boyfriend, Max's best friend, has admitted she's hard to handle. Yet, out of respect for Max, I kept my feelings bottled up, until I couldn't anymore. Looking back, maybe I should have spoken up sooner. Maybe enduring her behavior for so long only made my eventual reaction harsher. But at the time, I convinced myself it wasn't my place. After all, who was I to call her out? But last week, she crossed a line I couldn't ignore. The breaking point came during what should have been a normal, low-stakes conversation. We were all hanging out at Max and Anna's place. Casual, nothing fancy. At some point, the topic shifted to a particular brand of products. I happen to own something from that brand, which I casually mentioned. For context, the brand's founder is controversial. And while I don't agree with his personal views, I've always maintained that boycotting every problematic company would leave us with very few options in life. But Anna? Oh, she took this as her moment to shine. Her tone turned sharp, almost confrontational. "I can't believe anyone with principles would buy from that brand," she said, glaring at me. Her words weren't just an opinion, they felt like a direct attack, meant to humiliate me in front of everyone. And the irony? She's borrowed this very product from me before, multiple times, without a word of protest. That was the moment something inside me snapped. For over a year, I'd smiled through her jabs, excused her behavior, and kept the peace for Max's sake. But this was too much. It wasn't about the product or even her hypocrisy. It was the sheer audacity of her hostility, so openly aimed at me. Still, I kept my composure, at least in the moment. I didn't confront her right then and there. Instead, I waited until we'd left their house and had a quiet conversation with Max. I told him, calmly but firmly, that I didn't want to join any more group outings with Anna. I explained that her behavior had reached a point where it wasn't just unpleasant, it was unbearable. Max nodded almost sympathetically and admitted that Anna could be a bit much. For a brief moment, I felt validated, but that validation didn't last long. The next day, Anna reached out with what she called an apology, though it felt more like a weak excuse wrapped in insincerity. And that's when things really blew up. After that night, I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. Anna's comment wasn't just the straw that broke the camel's back. It was a whole haystack piled on top of an already fragile situation. So I decided to talk to Max directly, hoping he'd understand where I was coming from. He's always been level-headed, and honestly, he's the only reason I hadn't addressed this sooner. I approached him carefully, not wanting to create unnecessary drama. We were alone, just the two of us, and I laid it out as honestly as I could. I told him how Anna's behavior had been wearing me down for months. I mentioned the constant negativity, the unnecessary hostility, and how it felt like she was singling me out. I also made it clear that the comment about the brand wasn't an isolated incident, but part of a much bigger pattern. Max listened without interrupting, nodding occasionally. When I finished, he sighed and said, "Yeah, Anna can be difficult sometimes. I know she doesn't always come across the right way." It was a relief to hear him acknowledge it, even if it wasn't the outright support I had hoped for. He didn't try to defend her actions, which I appreciated, but he also didn't seem surprised by my frustration. I told him that, for my own peace of mind, I didn't want to be part of any more group outings involving Anna. He seemed to understand, though he looked uncomfortable. "I get it," he said. "I'll talk to her." At that moment, it felt like progress, a small step toward resolving things. But what I didn't realize was that my decision to involve Max would only complicate matters further. The next day, I received a message from Anna. Seeing her name pop up on my phone immediately put me on edge. I hesitated before opening it, unsure of what to expect. Was she angry? Defensive? Turns out it was an apology. Well, sort of. Her message started with an acknowledgement of the previous night's comment. "Hey, I just wanted to say I'm sorry if I came across harshly yesterday. That wasn't my intention," she wrote. At first glance, it seemed like an attempt at reconciliation, but the more I read, the less genuine it felt. She didn't apologize for the actual words she used or the way she made me feel. Instead, she leaned heavily on excuses. "You know how I get when certain topics come up," she added, almost as if shifting the blame to her own personality quirks. It didn't feel like she was owning up to anything. It felt performative, like she was apologizing because Max told her to, not because she truly regretted her actions. And frankly, after more than a year of dealing with her behavior, I was past the point of accepting half-hearted gestures. Still, I decided to respond. I thanked her for the apology but kept it brief, not wanting to reopen the conversation. That seemed to trigger something in her because, shortly after, she called me. On the phone, she tried to justify her actions further, saying things like, "I didn't mean it personally," and "I'm just passionate about certain issues." I could feel my frustration bubbling over. Her apology wasn't about repairing the relationship. It was about saving face. That's when I snapped. I told her, as calmly as I could, that her constant hostility had worn me down and that maybe she should consider therapy or some other way to manage her emotions. It wasn't a suggestion meant to hurt her. It was the truth. But as soon as the words left my mouth, I knew there'd be fallout. The moment I suggested therapy, the tone of the conversation shifted dramatically. Anna went silent for a beat, and when she spoke again, her voice was tight, almost trembling. "Therapy? You think I need therapy?" she asked, incredulity dripping from every word. I didn't backpedal. "Yes, Anna, I do," I said, keeping my tone steady. "This isn't about last night. It's about how you've treated me and others for a long time. I don't think you realize the impact your behavior has." Her response was immediate and explosive. "Who do you think you are to tell me that?" She snapped. She accused me of being judgmental, of overstepping boundaries, and even of trying to turn Max against her. It was like a dam had broken, and every ounce of her anger from the past year came pouring out. I tried to stay calm, but it was impossible not to get defensive. I reiterated that this wasn't about tearing her down, but about encouraging her to reflect on her actions. "Everyone has things they need to work on," I said, "and there's no shame in getting help." But she wasn't having it. The conversation ended with her hanging up, leaving me sitting there staring at my phone, heart pounding. It wasn't just the fight itself that shook me. It was the realization that I had finally said everything I'd been holding in for over a year. Shortly after, Max called me. He was upset, asking why I didn't talk to him before saying something so personal to Anna. I explained that this wasn't about him. It was between me and Anna, but he didn't see it that way. "You could have let me handle it," he said. In that moment, I started questioning everything. Was I too harsh? Or was this the wake-up call Anna needed? Max's reaction threw me off more than I expected. While I knew he might feel protective of Anna, I didn't anticipate how strongly he'd defend her. The moment he called, I could tell he was upset. His voice had an edge to it, the kind that comes from someone trying to stay calm but failing. "Why would you say something like that to her?" he asked, skipping any pleasantries. "You should have come to me first." I took a deep breath before responding. "Max, this has been building up for over a year. I've held back out of respect for you, but last night, and her so-called apology, it was too much. She needed to hear the truth." He wasn't satisfied. "But that's my wife. You don't think I'm aware of her issues? It's not your place to tell her she needs therapy." His words stung. I wasn't trying to overstep or disrespect their marriage. But where was the line? Was I supposed to keep tolerating her behavior indefinitely just because we shared a social circle? "Max, I didn't say it to hurt her," I said. "I said it because it's true. She's hostile, unpredictable, and it's affecting everyone around her, including you." That last part struck a nerve. She's my wife, and I know how to handle her. What you said only made things worse. I tried to explain that shielding her from honest feedback was enabling the very behavior that made her so hard to be around. But Max wasn't hearing it. To him, I had crossed a boundary. When the call ended, I felt a mix of emotions: frustration, guilt, and a lingering sense of righteousness. I wasn't trying to destroy their relationship or humiliate Anna. But was Max right? Should I have let him mediate instead? After the call with Max, I couldn't stop replaying his words in my head. "That's my wife. You should have let me handle it." It felt like he was placing all the blame on me, as if I'd overstepped some invisible line. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that Max's reaction was part of the problem. For over a year, Anna's behavior had been a constant source of tension, not just for me, but for everyone in our social circle. And yet, Max seemed content to brush it off, dismissing her hostility with a casual, "That's just how she is." But why? Why was it my job, or anyone else's, to tolerate her mood swings and outbursts while Max acted like it was normal? I started to wonder if Max's protectiveness was doing more harm than good. By shielding Anna from honest feedback, he wasn't helping her grow or confront the impact of her actions. Instead, he was enabling her to continue acting out, knowing there would be no real consequences. It wasn't just frustrating. It felt unfair. How could he expect everyone to walk on eggshells around her while refusing to acknowledge the weight of her behavior? And what about Anna? Did she even realize how much she relied on Max to smooth things over for her? Or had she grown so used to being protected that she didn't see a need to change? It wasn't just about the argument anymore. It was about the larger pattern. Max's unwillingness to address Anna's issues head-on was a big part of why things had reached this breaking point. Still, I couldn't shake the guilt. Maybe I could have approached the situation differently or chosen my words more carefully. But at the same time, part of me felt justified. If Max wasn't going to tell Anna the truth, wasn't it better that someone finally did? I kept turning the question over in my mind. Had I stepped into a role that wasn't mine to play, or was I simply doing what Max should have done all along? With everything that had happened, one thing became glaringly clear. Anna's behavior wasn't just affecting me. It had been casting a shadow over our group outings for as long as I could remember. Thinking back, I realized how much her mood dictated the atmosphere. If Anna was in a good mood, the evening would be fine, pleasant even. But if she was having one of her off days, the entire dynamic shifted. Conversations became tense, as if everyone was trying to avoid saying the wrong thing. Jokes didn't land because we were too busy gauging her reaction. Sometimes Max would step in to smooth things over, but his attempts often felt more like damage control than genuine solutions. The result? Even when she wasn't actively lashing out, her presence felt like a ticking time bomb. It wasn't just me who noticed this. My boyfriend had mentioned it a few times, though he was careful to stay neutral. Anna's moods are unpredictable, he'd say, as if that made the situation more palatable. But I knew he felt the same discomfort I did. And Max? He seemed resigned to it, as if managing Anna's behavior was just part of his reality. The more I thought about it, the more frustrated I became. These weren't isolated incidents. This was a pattern. And the fact that our group plans were so often dictated by Anna's emotional state made it all the more exhausting. Sometimes it even felt like she didn't want to be there at all, like Max had dragged her along against her will. In hindsight, I wondered why we'd tolerated it for so long. Was it out of loyalty to Max? A misguided attempt to keep the peace? Whatever the reason, I couldn't ignore the toll it had taken, not just on me, but on everyone around her. Now that you know everything, I need your perspective. Did I cross a line, or was I justified in what I said to Anna? Let me break it down one last time. For over a year, I tried to keep the peace. I bit my tongue, overlooked her comments, and did my best to navigate her unpredictable moods, all out of respect for Max and my boyfriend. But where do you draw the line between keeping the peace and losing your own sense of self-respect? Every snide remark, every unnecessary jab chipped away at my patience until there was nothing left. When Anna made that comment about the brand, it wasn't just about the product or even the hypocrisy of her using it before. It was the culmination of everything. Months of being targeted, dismissed, and made to feel like I was walking on eggshells around her. And when she apologized the next day, it didn't feel genuine. It felt like damage control, probably instigated by Max. That's why I snapped. I told her the truth, not to hurt her, but because it felt like she needed to hear it. But maybe Max was right. Maybe it wasn't my place to say what I said. After all, Anna is his wife, and their dynamic is theirs to manage. On the other hand, does that mean Anna gets a free pass to treat people poorly just because her husband is willing to excuse it? Where's the accountability in that? Ultimately, this isn't just about Anna or Max. It's about boundaries, honesty, and what it means to speak up when something isn't right. I didn't handle everything perfectly, and maybe my frustration made me harsher than I intended. But should I really have stayed silent? That's why I'm turning to you. Am I the jerk for saying what I said? Should I have let Max handle it? Or was it about time someone called Anna out? Let me know, because honestly, I'm still trying to figure it out myself.